Imagine a world full of people walking around with guns, people doing drugs everywhere, and fighting everywhere you went. When you picture this world, you probably think of some sort of war zone, or maybe the rough part of a big city. Now, would you believe me if I told you that this is what America will come to, and the reason is because of video games? While this is an extreme circumstance, and most likely improbable, the belief that video games can solely be blamed for violence in teenagers is just as ludicrous. Today, I will be persuading you that video games do not make teens more violent. Mature-rated video games are intended for individuals that are 17 years old and older. However, I've been playing these games since the age of 13, as well as many of my friends. And I've never been in a fight, and I can say for them, none of them have really displayed too much aggressive behavior. So the claims that video games make kids violent just seems a little unbelievable to me. In this speech, I'll explain why video games do not make teenagers more violent, how they can actually be helpful, and how parents can influence what effect video games have on their kids. So let's start by looking at the connection between video games and violence. Critics of violent video games say that those who play those types of games become more violent, giving these types of video games bad reputations. The video game industry is a very large one, so these type of claims can hurt sales and even bring a bad name just to the franchises that belong in this category. Games that can be classified as violent are oftentimes a favorite of adolescent males. According to a Pew Research study, 50% of boys name a genre or a game with a rating of mature or AO for adults only as one of their top 3 favorite games. With this amount of kids playing mature games, wouldn't you think that violent crimes in this age range would be on the increase? This isn't the case at all, however. As Procon.org says, the arrest rate for juvenile murders has fallen 71.9% between the years of 1995 and 2008. Also, the arrest rate for all juvenile crimes has declined 49.3%. In this same period, video game sales have more than quadrupled. So these two factors between video game sales and violent crimes in juveniles almost seem to be working inversely, as one is rising and the other is falling. Now that is a massive growth for the industry. So why do so many people play these types of games? Many people use games as a way to release anger without actually harming another person. Teens that are made violent by games need to understand the difference between games and reality, and need to be taught what acceptable behavior is. But does virtual violence actually help someone relieve their anger from real life? During a study of teens with anger problems conducted by Harvard Medical School, they found that teens who received standard therapy as well as played a video game that was designed to help them learn how to keep their heart rate under control showed significant improvement at keeping the heart rate down compared to those who only received standard therapy. Playing violent video games reduces violence in adolescent boys by serving as a substitute for rough and tumble play, meaning that they use this almost as an outlet to release their frustration and their anger. So why do so many people believe that video games can make a person more violent? If kids and teens are taught that most of what they see in video games is not acceptable in real-world everyday life, then that will allow video games to be played the way they were meant to be played. So who can be blamed for the blur between real life and the life in a video game? Is it the games? Is it the kids? Personally, I believe part of it falls on the parents too. The Federal Trade Commission found that in 2000, 85% of minors were able to go into a store and purchase a game that was rated mature or over. Today, that number is in the low teens, so it has decreased greatly. Also, when it comes to studies that have found connections between violence and video games, there's been a lot of doubt that these research studies were actually credible and relevant. Psychologist Christopher Ferguson led a study that found that not only was there no link between violence and video games, between violent media and behavior, but it also questioned the methodology of previous studies suggesting the two are related, meaning that these studies may not have been conducted in a way that would have actually found a relevant connection between the two. So in conclusion, there are several different topics about video games that I've discussed with you today. During recent years, violent crime rates in teens has gone down, while the sale of video games has increased dramatically. Studies have been conducted that show video games can actually help relieve anger, and they don't make a person more violent. Personally, I believe that it's a parent's responsibility to raise their kids in the right way and to teach them what is the correct way to act in real life, and to understand that not everything they see in video games and movies or what they hear in music is how they should be acting. After hearing the information that I provided with you today, do you believe teenage violence and video games can be connected? And if you were a parent, would you allow your kid to play mature-rated video games before the age of 17? Thank you for listening. I appreciate you giving me your time.